They took our history first. Our books were burned in silent, cold flashes. Our art was scoured from the public view. Our music was replaced with the endless, humming drone of their compliance engines. The overseers, our silent gray masters, wanted a clean slate, and we were the chalk marks they intended to wipe away. They took our names and gave us numbers. They took our worlds and gave us sectors. They took our purpose and gave us tasks. We became a quiet, efficient machine for their vast, unfeeling empire. A people with no past, they believed, could have no future. But they made one small, catastrophic error. They let us keep our kitchens. They saw them as relics, primitive places of inefficient nutrient processing. Our attachment to them was a quaint little flaw, a harmless echo of a forgotten age. Let the primitives have their little cooking rituals. It kept them docile. So we clung to our kitchens. In a galaxy of polished chrome and sterile nutrient paste, our kitchens were wood and steel. They were fire and steam. They were the last places we could gather, the last places we could remember without speaking a word. The taste of a grandmother's stew was a story they could not erase. It began slowly, a shared meal in a hidden alcove. The air was thick with the scent of roasted garla root. It was a contraband smell in a world of odorless perfection. We were breaking a dozen minor sanitation edicts. That alone felt like a victory. Anya, who had once been a star science teacher, broke the bread. She looked at each of us. Her eyes held a fire we had not seen in years. The steam from the stew swirled around her. She held up a piece of the dark, crusty loaf. "They took the stars from our sky," she whispered. "But we still have the yeast that makes things rise." A dangerous idea was sparked in that small room. A hope that tasted of salt and herbs. Our defiance would not be shouted in the streets. It would be whispered over simmering pots. It would be kneaded into dough. Our revolution would be seasoned with hope and served hot. We decided our history would not be written in books. It would be written in recipes. Our stories would be passed down in the measurements for a spice blend. Our anger would be the heat of the oven. Our rebellion, our great and terrible uprising, would be hidden inside a cookbook. The first message was a star map. It had to be. We needed to know where we were. We needed to know where our scattered people had been taken. Old Man Elmsworth was a baker. His hands were gnarled and dusted with a lifetime of flour. He was the perfect person to send the first whisper into the void. He worked all night. The dough was his canvas. He kneaded it with a slow, deliberate rhythm. The motions were ancient. They were comforting. But that night, they were also treason. He used a special blend of blue-grain flour. It would leave faint streaks in the finished loaf, if you knew how to look. The streaks were star lanes, tiny, almost invisible lines in the baked bread. A cluster of poppy seeds near the edge was our lost colony, Cygnus. A score mark on the crust, a simple cut to let steam escape, was the vector to a hidden nebula, a place where we might find old, abandoned comms relays. The oven felt like a forge of creation that night. He slid the loaf in with a prayer on his lips. The heat transformed the dough. The message was sealed inside. The next morning, he sold the loaf to a trusted courier. The courier just looked like a man buying his morning bread. An overseer patrol floated by, its red eye scanning, unblinking. It saw nothing but a simple, primitive transaction. It saw nothing at all. That simple loaf of bread traveled 1,000 light years. It was passed from hand to hand. It was a gift. It was a meal. It was the first word in our new language of freedom. When it reached its destination, It was sliced open with reverence. The star map was revealed. For the first time in a generation, we knew where to find each other. Our first success emboldened us. A star map was one thing. But could we hide something more complex? Could we hide the tools of our own liberation in plain sight? Anya gathered the brightest minds we had left. Engineers, chemists, physicists. All of them now worked as line cooks and dishwashers. They met in the back of a noodle shop. The steam was a perfect shield for their whispers. The plan was brilliant. It was insane. We would turn recipes into schematics. The grand design for our revolution would be disguised as a collection of our favorite meals. Aunt Marin's Galactic Core Goulash. That was the name we gave the blueprint for a miniature reactor. The list of ingredients was a parts manifest. 1 pound of ion-fed beef. That was the containment shell. 2 sprigs of thyme. That was the ignition assembly. The instructions were the assembly process. Sear on high heat for 3 minutes. That was the firing sequence for the magnetic coils. Every measurement was a vital piece of a machine. A cup was a unit of power. A teaspoon was a measure of resistance. A pinch of salt was a specific microcapacitor. It was a language of breathtaking complexity. It was also completely invisible to our masters. They scanned the cookbook file. Their logic engines saw only nutritional data and cultural nonsense. We worked tirelessly. We tested our recipes, sometimes with delicious results, sometimes with less delicious ones. I remember Reese, our lead engineer, tasting a test stew. He made a terrible face. "The capacitance is all wrong," he coughed. "Tastes like I licked a battery." We learned to be very, very precise. A mistake in seasoning could mean a critical failure in the real device. The cookbook grew. We added fusion flame chili. It was a recipe for a cutting torch. We designed EMP anadas. They were small pastries that hid the schematic for a localized energy pulse device. We were building an arsenal, and we were doing it right under their noses. Our oppressors thought we were just preserving old food traditions. We were cooking up the end of their empire. The butcher's shop became a critical hub. The butcher, Kalen, was a mountain of a man. His hands could snap bone, but his mind was as sharp as his cleavers. He became our quartermaster. He sourced the strange metals and components we needed. He just listed them as exotic cuts of meat. Our lead engineer, Reese, would visit him weekly. Their conversations were a masterpiece of code. "I need a fine cut of starworm fillet," Reese would say. He was asking for a specific length of superconductive wire. Kalen would nod. "That's a rare cut. The texture is very delicate." He was confirming the wire was fragile and hard to acquire. They would stand over a side of Grok's beast. Kalen would point with his knife. "The spinal cluster is complex on this one," he would say. He was pointing to a diagram he had carved into the fat, a diagram of a new circuit board. Reese would study it intently. "I see. The marbling is exquisite. It will require slow cooking." He was saying the circuit was dense and needed careful assembly. More people joined our cause in secret. A seamstress wove conductive thread into tapestries. They became flexible communication antennae. A junk hauler modified his ship. He could smuggle components in shielded scrap metal bins. A hydroponics expert learned to grow crystalline structures. They were perfect for our data storage devices. Everyone learned the language of the kitchen. They learned to speak of circuits as cuts of meat. They discussed power cells as if they were root vegetables. Our conspiracy was a living, breathing thing. It grew in the dark corners of the galaxy. It was nurtured in the warmth of 1,000 different kitchens, and its heart was the simple, beautiful idea of a shared meal. Our cookbook was nearly complete. It was a masterwork of culinary arts and sedition. But a book is useless if it stays on one shelf. The word had to be spread. We needed our recipes on every human world, every colony, every forgotten outpost in the dark. We devised a new plan, a plan born of their own arrogance. The overseers loved studying our primitive culture. It reinforced their sense of superiority. They collected our old songs. They analyzed our extinct languages. We would present the cookbook as a gift, a treasure of our lost cultural heritage. Anya, with her background as a teacher, was chosen to make the presentation. She stood before the sector governor, an overseer, a being of cold logic and gray flesh. It hovered silently in its armored shell. Its single red eye stared at her. It was designed to inspire terror. Anya just smiled. "This is the Hearthstone collection," she said. Her voice was steady. "It is the sum of our culinary history, a record of our peoples, told through food. We wish to gift it to the archive, so our heritage is not lost forever." She projected an image of the cookbook's cover. It was beautiful, warm and inviting, full of pictures of steaming pies and roasted meats. The governor's translator spoke. Its voice was a monotone buzz. "Your attachment to organic consumption is inefficient, but your cultural data is noted. The file will be accepted into the central archive." It was that simple. The overseer's pride was their undoing. They saw a collection of recipes. They could not see the knives hidden inside. The file was uploaded. It spread through their own network like a virus, a delicious, savory virus. In minutes, it was available on every human colony. Our cookbook was on every terminal, every personal data slate, every colony's central server. We had given our people the tools for freedom. Now, we just had to teach them how to cook. An inspector arrived on a Tuesday. We had been expecting him. Not him specifically, but someone like him. An overseer with a flicker of something more than logic. A tiny spark of suspicion. This one's designation was Unit 734, but we called him Inspector Grimsby. It felt better to give your doom a silly name. He came straight to Anya's kitchen. It was now the central hub of our operation. He floated through the door. The air grew cold. The happy bubbling of a stew on the stove seemed to quiet. His red eye scanned everything. The spice racks, the cooling racks, the new device we were building on the central table. "Explain this device." The inspector's machine voice droned. He was pointing a metallic claw at our prototype. It was the trigger for our system-wide shutdown. It looked a lot like a new kind of spice grinder. At least, that's what we hoped it looked like. Reese stepped forward, wiping his hands on his apron. He smiled a greasy, charming smile. "That, Inspector, is a kinetic spice mill," he said. "Standard grinders crush the spices. This beauty uses resonant frequencies. It gently shakes the flavor molecules loose. It gives you a much richer taste profile." It was, of course, complete nonsense. The inspector's eye focused on the device. It zoomed in on the power cell. It analyzed the frequency modulator. For a moment, we were certain it was over. We could feel the cold void of space waiting for us. The silence stretched for an eternity. Then the inspector spoke again. "The energy consumption is inefficient for nutrient preparation." Reese just shrugged. But flavor, Inspector. You can't put a price on flavor. It's an art, not a science." We held our breath. The inspector hovered for another long moment. Then, it turned and floated out of the kitchen. "Continue your inefficient practices," it buzzed as it left. We almost collapsed with relief. We had passed the test. Our cover was holding. The inspector's visit was a warning. They were watching. But they were still seeing what they wanted to see. They saw quaint primitives playing with their food. They were too logical to understand the illogical power of a good story or a very convincing lie. Our success with the inspector had an unexpected effect. It made us bolder. The story of the kinetic spice mill spread through the network. It became a legend, a symbol of our ability to outwit the masters. And with that legend, our network grew. It grew far beyond our wildest dreams, from the core worlds to the outer rim, on agricultural moons and deep space mining stations. 1,000 hidden kitchens joined our cause. Each one was a new node in our secret network. Each one was a spark of defiance in the dark. We were no longer a small group of friends in a back room. We were an army. Our cookbook was the common language. A colonist on a frozen ice world would read the recipe for solar flare soup. They would understand it was a guide to building a powerful heater. A factory worker on an industrial world saw assembly line lasagna. They knew it was instructions for sabotaging their machinery. The network was decentralized. It was beautiful. If one kitchen was discovered, the others would continue. We communicated through recipe updates. A new ingredient added to a dish could be a warning. A change in cooking time could be a new set of coordinates. The overseers saw a living document of a primitive culture. We saw a battle map that was constantly evolving. We were a quiet, simmering revolution. We were everywhere and nowhere. We were connected by the shared secret hidden in every pot and pan. Our cookbook was now on every colony's server, and the time was coming to decide what we would cook next. The main course was approaching. We needed a master recipe, a final, system-wide shutdown. One single action, coordinated across a dozen star systems. A move so bold, so absolute, it would cripple the Overseer's empire in a single moment. It would be the most complex dish we had ever attempted to create. Anya called it the Great Galactic Bake-Off. A little bit of humor to keep the terror at bay. The plan was deceptively simple. We had hidden our devices, our spice mills, in kitchens across the galaxy. On a specific day, at a specific time, everyone would turn them on. The signal would be a universal baking timer. We embedded a small, encrypted file in the cookbook's latest update. It was an update for a popular recipe, Starlight Soufflé. The new instructions called for a very precise, very unusual baking time, a time that would sync across every system. When that timer hit 0 on millions of ovens at once, it would send a signal, a simple, encoded pulse. This pulse would activate our hidden devices. Every device would release a targeted energy wave, a wave tuned to the exact frequency of the Overseer's power grid, a silent, invisible storm of energy. The effect would be instantaneous. Every Overseer ship, every drone, every control center, every single piece of their technology would go dark. It would be a total, system-wide blackout. And in that darkness, we would have our chance. A chance to rise up. A chance to take back what was ours. But for the recipe to work, every single ingredient had to be perfect. Every kitchen had to be ready. Every baker had to be brave. It was an audacious, magnificent, terrifying plan. We sent the update out, and we waited for the galaxy to preheat its ovens. Then we found the sour ingredient. There was a traitor among us. The leak was small at first, an Overseer patrol showing up at a component drop we thought was secret. A coded message that was met with silence. A kitchen that suddenly went dark. We tried to convince ourselves it was just bad luck. But the pattern became undeniable. Someone was feeding our secrets to the overseers. Someone who knew our code. Someone who understood our recipes. The thought was a cold knot in our stomachs. After all this time, after all we had built, we were being betrayed from within. We had to hunt them. But we could not use standard methods. We could not risk exposing our network. We had to use our own secret language. We had to set a trap made of breadcrumbs, a recipe designed to catch a rat. Anya devised a series of false recipe updates. Each one was sent to a different small group within our inner circle. Each recipe contained a unique, tiny piece of false information. A fake meeting point disguised as a butcher shop. A non-existent component hidden in an ingredient list. A false activation time for a minor device. We watched. We waited. The trap was set. We monitored the overseer's movements with our hidden sensors. We were looking for any reaction that corresponded to our fake data. For days, there was nothing. The stress was immense. We were hunting one of our own. Trust, the most vital ingredient we had, was beginning to curdle. Then, we got a hit. An overseer inspection squad raided a bakery on Kepler 186F, a bakery mentioned in only one of our fake recipes. The one we had sent to a man named Yorick. He was our logistics coordinator for the Outer Rim, a man we had trusted, a man we had shared meals with. The betrayal was a bitter pill to swallow. We didn't know why he did it. Fear? Greed? It did not matter. He had to be stopped. We sent out one last, real recipe. It was for a dish called Trader's Tart. The ingredients included a fast-acting, non-lethal neurotoxin. The delivery instructions were very, very clear. Jorik would be neutralized before he could do any more harm. With the traitor dealt with, we could finally focus on our final act. The Great Galactic Bake-Off was back on, but Jorik's betrayal had cost us dearly. He had revealed the location of one of our main component caches. The overseers had seized it. We were now missing a critical part for our shutdown devices. It was a specific type of focusing crystal. Without it, our energy pulse would be too diffuse. It would not be strong enough to take down the entire grid. There was only one other known source. A high-security overseer shipping depot 3 systems away. A direct assault was impossible. So we planned one last spice run. We would disguise a daring raid as a simple, routine delivery. Reese, our engineer, modified a small cargo hauler. He made it look exactly like an interplanetary food delivery vessel. Its cargo hold was filled with crates of actual spices. Pungent, overwhelming spices from a dozen different worlds. Hidden inside one of those crates, shielded by layers of lead-lined canvas, was our team. Kalen the Butcher was there, along with a small, hand-picked crew. Their mission was to get into the depot, swap our empty crate for the one containing the crystals, and get out without anyone ever knowing they were there. The plan relied on the overseer's disdain for us. They would scan the ship. They would register it as an organic material transport. An inefficient, slightly disgusting vessel not worthy of their full attention. The powerful smell of the spices would help mask our team's life signs from their sensors. It was a long shot. A crazy, desperate gamble. The ship, named the Spicy Lady, made its approach to the depot. We watched on our hidden monitors, our hearts hammered in our chests. An overseer patrol ship moved to intercept it. A cold, gray predator in the dark. It hailed them. We listened, unable to breathe. "State your cargo and destination," the machine voice demanded. Our pilot, a young woman named Eva, responded. Her voice was perfectly calm, perfectly bored. "Spices, a whole lot of them, heading to Sector 7 for nutrient paste flavoring. There was a long pause. The overseer's ship scanned the spicy lady. From our view, we could see the scan waves washing over it. Then the overseer's ship spoke again. "Proceed." It moved away. The first hurdle was cleared. The final spice run was underway. The day arrived. The great galactic bake-off. Across the stars, a silent, coordinated effort began. In millions of kitchens, on ships and on planets, people started to cook. They followed the updated recipe for Starlight Soufflé. It was a notoriously difficult dish. It required absolute precision, perfect for our purposes. The recipe's instructions were a countdown. Whip the egg whites for exactly 12 minutes. That was the time needed to bring the hidden devices to full power. Fold in the stellar sugar slowly, from east to west. This was the final targeting calibration, aligning the energy wave. Every step was a command. Every motion was a part of the symphony. We watched our secret network, a map of lights showing which kitchens were active. One by one, lights blinked on. Kepler, TRAPPIST-1, Proxima Centauri, from the oldest core worlds to the newest settlements on the frontier. A wave of silent, culinary defiance was sweeping the galaxy. Millions of people who had never met were acting as one. An overseer might walk past an apartment window. It might see a family gathered in their kitchen, a mother showing her daughter how to fold the batter just right. It would see a quaint, domestic scene. It would not see a weapon of immense power being armed. It would not see the final seconds ticking down to the end of its world. The universal timer we had hidden in the recipe neared 0. 10 seconds. We imagined the silent count in millions of minds. 9. The soft whir of our devices, masked by the sound of kitchen mixers. 8. A final stir of the batter. 7. The scraping of a bowl. 6. Ovens being opened across 1,000 worlds. 5. A silent prayer whispered. 4. The soufflé dishes being placed inside. 3. The oven doors closing with a soft click. 2. A million hands reaching for a million timers. 1. The ovens ignited, not with heat, but with a silent, invisible fire. The signal released by the timers activated our devices. From every kitchen, from every hidden spice mill, a pulse of pure energy erupted. It was perfectly tuned, perfectly synchronized. A single coherent wave that swept through the galaxy at the speed of light. For a moment, nothing happened. The stars looked the same. The universe was silent. And then, the lights went out. Not just the lights in our homes, all the lights. The cold, sterile lights of the overseers. Their ships went dark. Their patrol drones fell from the sky like stones. Their communication network collapsed into absolute silence. The endless humming drone of their compliance engines, the sound we had lived with for our entire lives, was gone. The silence was the most beautiful thing we had ever heard. It was a deep, profound quiet, the sound of a cage door swinging open. The grid was down, our masters were blind and deaf. In the darkness, we finally had our chance to rise up. The darkness was not an ending, it was a beginning. In the sudden silence, a new sound emerged, the sound of doors opening, the sound of neighbors calling to each other in the street, the sound of tools being gathered. The tools were no longer just for the kitchen. A baker's peel, used to slide bread into an oven, became a shield. A butcher's cleaver, once used for Grok's beast, became a weapon. A simple kitchen timer, used for soufflés, was now the detonator for a barricade charge. We streamed from our homes, Our faces were illuminated by torchlight and the glow of makeshift fires. The overseers were stranded. Their technology was inert. Their gray, lifeless bodies were trapped inside useless machines. We stormed their control centers. We took their archives. We reclaimed our cities, block by block. We were not soldiers. We were cooks and bakers, butchers and grocers. But we were fighting for our homes. We were fighting for our future. It was not a clean or easy fight, but it was our fight. We fought with the cleverness we had learned in our kitchens. We used our knowledge of chemistry to create diversions. We used our understanding of heat and pressure to break through their defenses. We turned the whole galaxy into our kitchen, and we were cooking up a storm. The taste of freedom was new. It was sharp and wild, and it was delicious. In the years that followed, we rebuilt. We found our lost histories. We learned our old names. We put the stars back in our sky. And at the center of our new republic, we placed our founding document. Not a constitution written on parchment, but a cookbook, its pages stained with flour and grease. The Hearthstone collection became a legend. It was a symbol of our victory, a reminder that the mightiest empires can be toppled by the quietest revolutions. It taught our children that great things can be hidden in small places, that hope can be found in the taste of a shared meal. We still cook from it. Its recipes are a part of our daily lives. But now, when we bake bread, we remember the star map it once carried. When we simmer a stew, we remember the schematic for a reactor that was hidden within. The cookbook taught us a vital lesson. It taught us that quiet things can roar, and that sometimes the most powerful weapon in the universe is a recipe.